Ladies and gentlemen, elected officials, guests, staff, citizens, John Morris. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Peoria County Executive Committee. It's Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. If the chair could get a motion to approve the minutes of 6:22. Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum, and thank you, Mr. Salzer. Having provided these in advance to all of you, are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes as submitted? I won't go for the other sign. That looked unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Sorrell, I know that you would like to do the introduction of John Morris instead of me this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is that time of year where the Peoria Riverfront Museum pays us a visit to give their annual report, and we have President and CEO of the museum, Mr. John Morris, with us today, along with several of his team, which I'll allow him to introduce. I think you're going to like the report that Mr. Morris has to give. John?
Is 5 minutes enough time, Mr. Morris?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. 5 minutes is perfectly adequate for our Vice Chairman, Todd Baker, who will begin the report. And then I just have a couple little addendums to it. But
amen, brother. I just want you to know that there is an over-under running around the room.
Oh, there is? Okay. I'm going to make it fast.
BS. That
Okay.
is true.
So please first allow me to introduce the vice chairman of our 21-member all-volunteer board, who raises money, works hard, does the policy work of the private not-for-profit museum known as the Peoria Riverfront Museum. Steve Jackson, our chair, is on the road today, but our vice chair, Todd Baker, is with us.
Thank you, John. I just have to say there's 50 on the over, and whoever's holding the money, it'll be easy to get.
I took 26.
Yeah, there you go. One note before I make any comment is normally when you do this, you have to follow John, and nobody wants to do that because either people have already left or asleep. I just want to say on behalf of the 21 members or directors of the Peoria Riverfront Museum that we take our challenge and our charge seriously. We're excited about what's going on at the museum. We're excited about the team we have, an outstanding team. We pivoted in a COVID year, and I think when John's done speaking with you, you'll see what a great job our team did. A community is really measured on its culture and its cultural opportunities, and right down here on the riverfront, I think we have a gem. And I'm excited to be a part of that, and I'll just go ahead and give it to John. Thank you.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate what I call the greatest board of a private nonprofit in Peoria, the Peoria Riverfront Museum Board. These folks work so hard to help raise the private resources that make it possible for us to have an absolutely emerging world-class cultural institution. The Peoria Riverfront Museum is the only museum of art, science, history, and achievement, those four pillars, in the nation. It's the only multidisciplinary museum of its kind in the whole nation. And some of the things we've been able to do in the 4 years that I've been privileged to be the director, working with a terrific, talented team with one goal in mind, which is to inspire the community. We don't see the museum as the building. We appreciate the building owned by the taxpayers of the county of Peoria. And here we are today to answer to you to what we do with that building, but we don't see the museum as the building. We don't see the museum as a collection of artifacts or art or historical objects like the Duryea or the first white red-tipped blind cane in the nation, which is on display at the museum, or the earliest samples of the mass production of penicillin that came out of Peoria, or the most valuable collection of duck decoys from the Midwest and the Illinois River Valley in the nation. Those are important, but we don't see the museum as those things. We see the museum as a community of people seeking to inspire each other and be inspired by each other. And when you stand in the lobby of the museum and you see the young family come in with a child holding a free student family fun pass from our pioneering Every Student initiative that's funded privately. Right there, Mr. Chairman, if you'd hold that up with the T-Rex on it. A young man about that tall, I suspect he was in the 5th grade, showed up holding a pass like Andrew just had in his hand. And he was with 12 family members, 2 little babies, 1 in a stroller, 3 adults, siblings of all different size. It was a big family, and I think it was an extended family. And he was there having gone on 3 Every Student Initiative tours. We now not only bring students on the Every Student Initiative field trips, but we give them a pass worth up to $150, and in this case, the young man figured out a lot more, to bring their entire family back if they're part of an ESI school. And that kid, clinging to that pass, said, "I'm here to bring my family." And it's a spine-tingling moment to recall because it's how we are inspiring our community. And the Every Student Initiative we will announce on August 13th on something we call Public Service Appreciation Day, which is my way of saying we're not asking you for anything, but come to the museum for the press conference and see all that we have, if you can, on that day. We invite public officials from all throughout our service area to be there. And right now what you'll see is a first for Peoria. One of the largest and most important traveling exhibitions in the world today is coming out of New York City's famous American Museum of Natural History. That's the Night at the Museum. Remember that movie? This exhibition, T-Rex, the Ultimate Predator, presented by a huge sponsorship from CEFCU and many others, is the first time in Peoria history we have debuted an international blockbuster traveling exhibition right from Peoria. It is booked now for 7 years out into the future at major museums, or actually outside the United States and inside the United States. It will go from Peoria, and its next stop will be Vancouver. So how many of you have seen, by any chance, T-Rex? Anybody seen it yet? Thank you, Scott. Thank you for coming. Rob, was it scary? Terrifying? It's a magnificent exhibition, and please come down and see it. You've got a couple of passes in your folder there. Bring a friend. For those of you who are members of the museum, I say thank you from the bottom of our heart. Our Vice President for Development, Anne-Marie Miller, is with us, and one of her team members, Carolina Huser, who does social media and sponsorships, is with us today. Part of what I consider to be the greatest staff team that worked very hard throughout the pandemic. Mr. Chairman, the American Alliance of Museums, our association based in Washington, D.C., announced early on in the pandemic that they believed that 1/3 of museums would not survive the closure that was about to come upon us all. Not only did the Peoria Riverfront Museum buck that idea, we had the strongest fiscal year in our 9-year history since we opened the door. And we did so by securing what other small businesses, for-profit and nonprofit, were able to do with PPP and so forth. But that's not how we got there. Many museums who also secured those grants laid off employees. We laid off no full-time employees, not one. We retooled ourselves to go digital. We did more than 1,000 videos, social media posts, and emails to engage our public, and we finished with our first budget in the black since we opened the doors. So, thank you. How did we do it? There's a list of names in that purple folder. We call it the Visionary Society. It was thousands of people working together to give resources, but those names in the Visionary Society have kicked it up. Anybody gives 1,000 or 2,500 or 5,000. Not everybody can do that. Not every young family, a few young families can do that, but there are people who can and did in record numbers. Since I arrived at the museum 4 years ago and gave my first report shortly after that time, we started with 99 of those names on that sheet. We have 362, almost all of them members of our community right here today. So privately, people are stepping up, voluntarily giving. and it's making things happen. I want to mention a couple other last things. The museum has opened one of the most important new exhibitions we've had in years, entitled Bronzeville to Harlem, An American Story. Legendary artist Preston Jackson announced on March 6th at a press conference with me and our board, that he has promised to give permanently Bronzeville to Harlem to the Peoria Riverfront Museum so that the public has access to it forever. Why this is so incredible is that this is a story of American opportunity like no other, taken from a period of absolute beauty and music and poetry and opportunity known as the Harlem Renaissance, in the face of opposition, in the winds of opposition, in the winds of a difficult period. It is a story of opportunity and the promise. And Preston Jackson worked with us to give this piece to the museum. Please come and see it. It is an incredible permanent installation at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. Coming up, we will have exhibitions, including, for those quilters in the room, any quilters? Me neither. But I'll tell you something, quilting is about as Americana as it gets. And there's a guy who likes to make documentary films, usually up to 20 hours long, named Ken Burns. Mr. Chairman, you're very familiar with him and some of your volunteer work in the community. Ken Burns, well known to PBS audiences, is one of the greatest quilt collectors in the United States. We have been working with Mr. Burns in collaboration with our friends at WTVP and others, and we're going to be one of only 3 museums in the country to bring the private quilt collection of Ken Burns, documentary filmmaker, to Peoria. And that's really, that's going to expose audiences and bring in an entirely new audience. In addition, we're doing a phenomenal American photography exhibition on American railroaders during World War II. And we're working with Bon French, a guy who grew up in Peoria, went to Woodruff High School, moved up to Chicago, did very well in the investment world. And as some of you know, a little bit before the pandemic, Bon French announced that he would give $1 million to his hometown through the Peoria Riverfront Museum. And Bon French has done that and continues to be very involved. He is very passionate about the story of railroading, the laborers who built the railroads, and this photography exhibition is going to be really something special. On the horizon, we continue to work to serve the outlying areas of Illinois, like upstate Illinois. Thank you. I'm now addressing our friends in the Windy City, a city founded by DuSable, who farmed here for 10 years prior to moving north to found the Windy City, as upstate Illinois, because we're doing some things here that they don't have access to. We're working directly with New York City, the American Museum of Natural History on T-Rex. Some of you saw in the media, we just dedicated an incredible painting at OSF, St. Francis Medical Center, of St. Francis in the Desert, that is a 60 megapixel replica of a painting from the Frick Museum in New York. We are working to bring Peoria the greatest classic film-going experience anywhere in America. Now, how can I make such a radical claim as that? Very few giant screen theaters such as ours show the great classic films, if any. We have a New York scholar who's written 25 books on classic films, doing an intro and outro of every one of these classic films. And this week we've begun a weekly Friday night, 6:30 Alfred Hitchcock Festival, and we'll continue every Friday night at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. If you're looking for something to do or you have friends that love one of the great American art forms, classic film, come to see us. So let me conclude in this way, Mr. Chairman, before Todd Baker wins the $50. I am deeply grateful to the citizens of Peoria County. And I have a wall in my office that I knock on routinely as I'm describing who ultimately we're answering to. And that's we the people that our private organization was given the great trust to live in your building. And every day, with 220 partnerships in this community, within every student initiative that is going to expand and expand, that's changing lives here, every day we think about that. We're here to continue to inspire, and in any way we can help you, please let me know. It's a great honor to be the director of this museum, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate what the county does, has done, and continues to allow us to do privately with these donations. So God bless. Thanks for having me.
Don't go anywhere just yet. I want to make sure that the recognition for this initiative is told. I know who it is. Perhaps you would like to describe how important this is.
Yeah, so the Every Student Initiative was born out of really a collaboration between Polly Barton and the Barton Family Foundation. Sally Snyder, who had a dream. Sally has just been named our first board member emerita, or emeritus, which means a sort of honorary board member in the history of the museum. Many of you know Sally. She had the dream as a former school board president, could we bring every student in the Peoria public schools? And now we do it for East Peoria, and now we're expanding in the parochial schools, and we're looking for school districts throughout our entire Central Illinois region. As far as Havana, we're now getting inquiries about bringing every student to the museum. And Dr. Sharon Karat stepped forward and agreed to be the first 3 years ago. And Mr. Chairman, there are now more than 200, Anne Marie, I think it's 228 donors who are on, or more, maybe more than that now, who are on the list of supporting our ability to bring these students in. We are not interested in trying to make museum curators out of every one of these kids. That's not our goal. Our goal is to use the tool of the museum to inspire them. The young lady who gets to actually touch a meteorite that came from outer space, which we have on display, or see one of the most beautiful landscape paintings you've ever seen, a newly acquired painting by artist Harold Greger, who died at age 90 last year in our collection. It's a spectacular painting of the agrarian landscape of our rich soil around here. So the Every Student Initiative, Mr. Chairman, will be etched someday on my my professional tombstone, which I'm not planning yet, not thinking about yet, but someday this is going to be one of the things that has defined our community, that we took a resource like this museum, the only multidisciplinary museum of its kind, and we built the bridge to our young people to inspire their confidence, their interest in learning, and to unleash their full talent and genius for the future. And I appreciate you mentioning that. Did I get everybody mentioned that I needed to?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Members, questions or comments for the president? Mr. Ricker.
Well, the first time I had lunch with Andrew, I handed him the $1, but I only have a $5 today, so I'm gonna get it to you.
We'll take it.
I'm gonna get it to you, but let me see. I got well, it's 5 years worth.
Well,
so
as long as you're coming up,
I'll take it. I'll take it. It's $5. This covers me for the next 5 years.
I want to don't go anywhere. Hang on, John. I want to
Yes.
impose on you a minute. Anybody else got any questions? How many, Mr. Dillon?
I've said it again, or said it before, but John, I love your enthusiasm, your passion for your job and for the community, and that there's no better cheerleader to promote Peoria and have you in that position. So I know I've said that before, but I'd be remiss when you come here not to say it again, but I appreciate everything you do, and I know a bunch of the board members and your staff and the amount of time that they put in it. And Sally's one of your biggest promoters, and might be a tie who bigger promoters are Peoria, Sally Snyder and John Morris, but two great people, and Peoria's lucky to have you guys.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you, Jimmy. So I'm going to impose on you. How many members or audience guests or staff have ever heard of a full Morris? I'm dating myself.
Yes,
clearly.
you are. Yes, you are.
Morris, I
No,
know
full a full Morris, F-U-L-L.
Yeah.
I thought you said Philip Morris.
Well, I didn't, Phil, but I appreciate
Well, that dates you, Andrew, to our.
John, we have a couple of anniversaries of key staff here. I was wondering if you would present them with their pins.
I'd be honored.
This is what a full Morris sounds like. Here's the first.
Would Shauna Musselman come forward? So, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of you and the county board and the citizens of Peoria County, of which I am proud to be one, 20 years of exceptional service to the taxpayers and the people of Peoria County. Congratulations. Here's your pen. Thank you. Thank you. Gretchen Pearsall. Behind the camera. Gretchen has made it. 5 years with the Peoria County. Let's hear it. Give it up. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for your service. Mr. Chairman, please come to the museum. Tell your friends to come to the museum. We are doing something that I'm going to promise you this. The world is going to hear about Peoria, Illinois again, as they have for more than 300 years of permanent settlement here. And the museum is going to be the megaphone that's going to help us tell our story. God bless.
Thank you, John. Oh, just everybody has to feel so good.
Mr.
Andrew, August 7th is a free day for all employees of the Peoria County, and I just want to get that on the record.
Thank you. We'll get that out through our distribution. Yes, Mr. Sorrell. Oh, great. Okay. This month we had planned on Miss Denise Jackson being here to give us an update on the development center downtown, but she was unable to be here today, and we'll have her back next month. Any update on Springdale? No, Kate is out. Okay. I'm not making that mistake again. I touched your wire once today, and it was hot. Let's see. Who wants to give the Gap loan report? I'm looking for finance somewhere.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to
Thank
do
you.
that. Just let me scroll to it in the packet. The Springdale draft minutes are exorbitantly long this month in the packet. Maybe it looks like their annual financial report. So the monthly CDAP Gap loan report's on page 38 in your packet. For CDAP, which is Gap loan, there are no outstanding loans, and so should deals present themselves, you've got a little over $760,000 in assets to make loans, should you choose to. We have one outstanding loan that's being two outstanding loans that are being paid from Keystone. One is Trefskers and one is Hare Racing. Both of those are current in their amortization schedule. Should you want to make additional loans out of Keystone, there's assets in the range of $7.875 million to use for that program and that purpose if you want to. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next is the county auditor's report. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Well, the report is in your packet. Is there any questions on it?
Members? Seeing none.
If you have any questions regarding the P card issue that was brought up earlier, the auditor is here to comment on that if you would like.
Anybody want to comment on that? The P card issue that was discussed during the external audit report. There'll be no comment. Thank you. Mr. Sorrell.
So next would be the enterprise zone report. There's no activity in the prior month, so there's no report in the packet. We only put that in the packet when there actually is activity to report out. Next, Mr. Chairman, not to usurp you, but we've got pending litigations for the related to the settlement that is a resolution. That's entirely up to you, Mr. Chairman, if you think we need that that executive session for the litigation, or if you just want to plow ahead of the resolution. Entirely up to you.
Since the resolution for settlement is in the packet, I don't think we need that. So, thank you, Scott. Could I get a motion then on item 5? Thank you, Dr. Blair. Thank you, Ms. Daly. Mr. Sorrell.
I'm going to turn it over to Dana Hughes, Assistant State's Attorney in the Civil Division, to walk through the item.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Chairman. Can you all hear me? Sorry about that. This matter came before the board for authority previously, and we were extended authority up to $200,000 to resolve this piece of litigation. It involves a Headington Oaks former resident who was injured at the facility, involved in alleged negligence and violations of the Nursing Home Care Act. There are attorney's fees provisions in this act as well, which was part of the discussion that we previously had, which has led to the settlement. This is actually quite a bit less than an outside mediator recommended that we settle the matter for. So it's our recommendation that the matter now settle for $200,000 as opposed to going to jury trial in Peoria County. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, counsel. Members? Mr. Sorrell?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I would add is through the course of the pending litigation process, just on the financial side, we've already accounted for this expense, so there's no budgetary authorization required with this approval. There's no appropriation required with this approval, having already accounted for it. I'm happy to answer any questions on the finance side of it, or if necessary, anything that we can talk about in open session related to the settlement in the case itself.
Thank you. This is where a chairperson needs to think. I'd like to apologize to the family and survivors of the decedent for the negligence of our care, which is not in dispute. I'd also like to include a written record when we do settle up that on behalf of the county board, the chairperson regrettably accepts the circumstances that led up to someone dying, and that we will be forever sorry. Okay? Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That would be
Nay.
unanimous. Who was that? Thank you, Mr. Salzer. Month we have a new way of doing this. We're going to go in order so I don't forget anything. I also notice it says standing committee agenda. So, Mr. Ricker, would you like to stand or sit?
I'll take my chance at sitting this time, sir. For Ways and Means this month, we had one resolution. It was the normal monthly delinquent taxes, and it did pass unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dillon.
So we had quite a few things on the agenda, but the first case, you'll see we don't very often come to cases with you recommending denial. It was staff denial, and also the ZBA recommended denial. So the land had already been split once in the past, and they were looking to split it to rural residential, which would potentially allow it to be split into further 1-acre lots. The issue with the property is there's issues with the road. Radnor Township road commissioner and the supervisor are not looking for development in there. There's issues with the bridge, but also a majority of that property is in a floodplain. Now, there's no study saying that is, but the historical data shows that there is, but you'd have to go through a study to prove the actual floodplain. I think it was like 6 point something of the 8 acres would actually be in a floodplain. So it was recommended for denial. So the motion was made to accept the ZBA's results, which was denial. So when we vote on this, it'd be in the affirmative to uphold the ZBA's, not a no vote. We went through a presentation on that. I'm not going to put you through that at the full board meeting unless you really want to go through that. But I thought it was our board meeting. It was appropriate for us to understand the findings of facts of why they got there. And I think the petitioner is basically, the petitioner was not at the meeting yesterday to pursue this any farther. So this is a no vote. So it would be, but it's coming to you as an affirmative to uphold the ZBA. The second zoning case we have was at Madison Park Shopping Center. There's a gaming cafe that's looking to go at the end of that. It's within 500 feet of a residence, so it had to get a special use. If it would not have been within that residence, it would have already been permitted, I think, in the C2 area. So there was a few objections, but if you know that area, it's in Sharon Williams District, but right up to mine. There's a gaming parlor right across the street, and that shopping center has been there since the 50s. So that was approved by the ZBA and unanimously, and we approved that yesterday. The rest is a subdivision waiver, which was basically about public water supply, so that was approved. And then we had two resolutions. One was a rollover. As you know, a lot of times when we get money for demoing houses or structures like that, it's not always spent in the fiscal year, so that needed to be rolled over. And then the last one we had was revenues and expenses related to the Small Business Stabilization Grant, about funding and getting everything taken care of there. So that was the resolutions for that. And then we did give a presentation. I had asked Kathy, everybody's following the news, and when you hear about 40-year building inspections in the state of Florida, we did have staff give us a report that's really unique to Miami-Dade County, and then Broward County followed. So it's really unique to, there was a building, I think in Miami in the 70s, I think they said, that collapsed. Now, we follow the International Building Code. I don't think the city of Peoria really has anything, but in larger municipalities like New York, Chicago, Boston, they have exterior inspections that they require every so often to make sure that the facade wouldn't fall down. But apparently, the International Building Code is going to take this up in their fall meeting and look to address if this is something that needs to be done in other places. So that was the report we asked for, just so that we have some basic understanding if anybody would ask us what our requirements are. So that is the report.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Any questions for the chairman? Just as a side note, I'm a Florida native, born in South Florida, in particular, Miami Beach, and Florida is just limestone, and there is nary a rock softer. It would almost be sand when I think about it. So very unique ground, but you can certainly engineer structures to stand on it. Thank you. Next up, Miss Duncan and her first tour to chair today. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Well, I'm going to give you a much better introduction
Yeah.
now that she.
Vice Chairman Betty Duncan chaired the meeting today, but we just had one resolution or committee action, which was review of executive session minutes. So that was it.
Thank you. And while you were absent, we thoroughly enjoyed Miss Duncan running the show. Thank you, Betty. Mr. Fennell?
I think everyone was there, but we had two resolutions. First one to pay off from the general fund surplus some general fund to capital projects, mainly the roof here at the courthouse.
Thank you. Any questions for the Honorable Vice Chairperson? Seeing none, thank you. Miscellaneous, and I'm going to see, I see many kind, hardworking elected officials and staff and council. Anybody over there, you good? How about you, Phil? Thank you. That's a Caffers. Ms. Relaford, Mr. Dillon, Mr. Ricker. So on, moving around. Gretchen? All right, Mr. Fennel.
Congratulations to my wife today for putting up with me for 53 years.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov. What color roses does she like, Jim?
Any color.
Any color. Well, I know it's late, but I'm inspired, so I need to hold you for a few more minutes and just lay out a conversation I had with Mr. Fennel. It'll only take a few minutes. For those of you that attended finance, on page 12 of the document, I do what I usually do when somebody else is running the committee. I get out my calculator and my pencil, and I want to thank Mr. Rosenbaum for loaning me a Better Earth Premium Organic Compost, telephone 697-0963 pen. And I was looking at the local use tax, which is the quarter point that's levied is not the right word, charged to residents of the unincorporated areas of Peoria County, as well as the general fund sales tax, which is by a mere 25 or 35 votes in a countywide referendum some years ago, is the public facilities sales tax, which supports the construction of and the bonds for Peoria Riverfront Museum. Those two taxes alone, and they're fair taxes, and there's another one on here, but we're only going to talk about this one, right? These two right now are likely to, I'll just bet a paycheck on it, will exceed plan this year by $2.656 million. Now, I could get all fussy and get my hair all knotted up by calling out the General Assembly, who took however long they took to finally close the loophole on the internet sales tax gap that has existed probably for the last decade in a fierce way, robbing local governments of treasure due to them that the state was collecting all for itself. But I won't. I will tell you, if I rough divide, and I just did it in my head, 2.656 million by 330, I'm going to be in the 7.5-ish number. So for those of you going, what's the magic of 330? No, but you'll like where I'm going, Steve. That is the net tax receipt for 1 cent countywide assessed by this county per penny. Once again, times 7.5, you have annualized 2.656 million, or what I would say is a clear and compelling reason why the lowest we will be lowering county property taxes next year is 7.5 cents. I haven't got into the public safety sales tax yet, because it's a near equal number at 1.456 million. Anybody listening? Hello, America. Your not in the situation to even consider this. And let's jump over here to Miss Daly's battle cry of the month. We have 6 cents of P-tax supporting the bonds at Headington Oaks. So when we get that close to zero, and we're going to try real hard, that's another 6 cents of fungible P-tax, general fund P-tax, that is a gift back to our taxpayers. Stop the presses. Let's think for a second. There are many an elected official, many an employee, many a county board member, certainly a few judges who have disagreed with our right sizing of this ship. They mostly disagreed with process. They didn't disagree with our authority, but we know some came to help us out willingly, and we're forever grateful. But not all came so easily, and you guys know you left that up to me to go fix. I appreciate that. But you are in one of the most unique situations. I'm just going to lay it out there, except for the city of Washington, who got sales tax excess during the pandemic. We're in one of the most unique situations of any county government in North America. Anybody ready to adjourn? Have a great afternoon. And our budget chairman, God bless you, because you're going to make some news. I was just doing that while he was running his meeting.